Isn't that where all the bots are, though?
I've no idea what you're talking about, Mark. I wasn't going to put modern technology into Room 101, but seeing as the custard thing went so badly against you, I think we must put unnecessary technology into Room 101. In it goes. So, but we have to be careful not to become grumpy old people who can't deal with the modern world. So what's your next choice?
Well, old people...
Yeah.
I'm going to be a bit more specific,
Yeah,
I think that would be...
Because otherwise we'd just be talking to ourselves up here.
Yeah, that would be slightly tyrannical. Old people who think that everything was better in the old days.
Yes. I mean, you know, you think like the Second World War and...
Well, it depends what old days you mean.
The Blitz got you out of the house, didn't it? Just stay where you were, the house went away, fresh air. Oh,
I'll tell you what, we went up to I was up to my neck in rubble, but I was happy.
Yeah.
And then
whenever I heard a doodlebug come over, we had a party.
Yeah, we did, and then they invented tin custard, and that was the start of everything going wrong. Yeah, I mean, obviously the old days covers everything from 1997 back to whenever Stegosauruses were about.
Yeah,
so
back
1972,
yeah.
I've been a bit more specific, but I think that sort of sense that things, the young people now, they've got no respect. And I think in particular what upsets me about this is hearing people our generation talk about it, because it used to annoy me when I was a kid, and now I hear a lot of people, particularly my age, say with music, I think punk did a lot of damage. I was the perfect age for punk, and I absolutely adored it, and I went to all the gigs, and I loved the Clash and the Pistols and the Damned and the Stranglers and the Joe, all of that. But there was a sort of sense that nothing before that was valid.
Yes.
And it took me years to get out of that, really. And I think a lot of people our age still have that mentality, and now they think nothing since then is any good either. So you have people sort of, oh, where's the music? Where's the fiery music now? And oh, this rap, it's all the same. And rap isn't all the same, and you might as well say jazz is all the same. So I think when I hear people do that, there was I just sort of do him sometimes as a character. You remember old Fred Truman?
Yes. Who
was a cricket commentator who I used to love listening to, because he would just say everything was fantastic up until 1967.
Yeah.
And then you could name...
When he retired from cricket.
When he retired, absolutely. You could say anything. I was thinking if he was around now, he'd go, look at the vaccinations they have now, these kids, they get a little prick in the arm. I don't call that a vaccination in my day, but a vaccination, you were put in a field, and Fatima Whitbread would dip a javelin into a bucket of vaccine, and she would hurl it at you from 45 yards. And when it went in your arm, you didn't flinch, or Jeff Cape took a shot put at you until you're up and out. It's just the sort of idea that suffering is good. And,
given your view of old people, I reckon you'd appreciate this quite inflammatory commercial. It's produced in America by a company called Nell Communications, and it's trying to get young people to vote. Have a listen to this.
Dear young people,
don't vote.
Don't vote.
Everything's fine the way it is.
Trump. That was us.
He's our guy.
Tax cuts for the rich. Oh, yeah.
Climate change? That's a you problem. I'll be dead soon.
Well, there's a bit of truth to that. Oh, Brexit was old people, wasn't it? I'm 93, I'm not even going to see the week out. Sod it, you deal with that.
There is one terrible thing about the modern world, I hope you'll agree with me about this, artificial intelligence. We have asked an artificial intelligence machine to write some jokes. There is I'm reading this word, I've got no idea what I'm saying here. There's an AI chatbot called ChatGPT. I mean, that could just be a hoax on me, I've got no idea what that means.
Right.
But we've asked it to write some jokes, right?
Okay.
About Crystal Palace.
Okay.
The football club that you support. Here we go. Why did the Crystal Palace fan cross the road? To get away from the Premier League table.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah, but it assumes that the Premier League table is a solid object.
Yeah, I know. Philosophically, it's got a way to go.
Which you can get away.
My favourite quick joke is
Yeah.
I go to the doctor's and he says, I've got a letter stuck up my arse, and the doctor has a feel about it. He says, I've got bad news, that's only the tip of the iceberg.
I don't know if I can put old people who complain about things in a room 101, because if I put old people who complain about things in a room 101, they'd only complain about being in room 101.
Yeah, but they'd be with lots of other old people. They'd be fine. They'd just be sat there going, oh, wasn't Queen Mother marvellous? They'd have a lovely time.
All right, then in they go into room 101. Your next choice is people who don't get jokes.
Yes, I think specifically it's people who take jokes literally. Now, I have an example of this going on right now in my life, because my son put a joke on social media, and I'm not going to do it justice actually, but he says, the cyclists, they complain to lorry drivers, they go, look, I've got the law on my side, you know, the law of the highway code. But the trouble is the lorry driver's also got a law, which is Newton's third law of motion, which means that when a lorry driver hits a cyclist, the lorry driver's going to win, right? So, in fact, if anything, it's on the cyclist side. But hundreds of these people have just gone berserk, and he's like the person to hate that day. Don't take it literally, and I think that's sort of something that social media has. It's not created it, but it's made it so much worse.
You lead me beautifully here to here are some examples from the internet of people misunderstanding jokes, right? Joke. The spread of coronavirus is based on two factors. One, how dense the population is. Two, how dense the population is.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Very good.
And
very good.
And someone has commented, they've said, you've said the same thing twice. What's the other one? No, I like this one as well. This is a Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar, in brackets, dying after being stabbed 27 times, says, please name a salad after me.
Right.
The comment said, that's not actually what happened, idiots.
Yes, of course. Of course, this is what happened. When Donald Trump was president, I put something on Twitter where I mentioned in passing that he was a psychopath, right? So 4 people, which is true, 4 people sent me messages saying, don't add to the stigma against psychopaths. There's meant to be a stigma against psychopaths. They're psychopaths. They're suffering as well, you know. They've got nowhere to put their salad because their fridge is full of eggs.
I've got another one here. Working in a mirror factory is something I can totally see myself doing. Comment. Why a mirror factory of all jobs?
Yeah, of course. When it was 100 years since the end of the First World War, we were all asked to turn our lights off to commemorate the event. And I put on social media, to amuse myself, I did my bit to commemorate the event. I turned off my headlights as I was driving up the M23, right? And, of course, I then looked a bit later and there was hundreds of people. How dare you insult these people? They went out to bloody Belgium and fought in the sun. Oh no, I didn't mean it. It wasn't to be taken literally. But I wonder if these people sit at Christmas. That's what I wonder if they sat there at the Christmas tree when people are reading out the cracker jokes. Someone goes, what's red and sits in the corner? A naughty strawberry. They go, well, that just doesn't make sense. I mean, a strawberry doesn't have any sense of shame or naughtiness. Wouldn't sit on a step, it would just sort of roll down them and land at the bottom, and then someone would squash it, take a terrible mess. Everybody thinks that they get jokes, don't they? So
yeah.
This is why, whenever you think back at it now, you know at school, the teacher goes, stop laughing, everybody! I like a joke as much as the next person, but we need... And when I look back at it now, I think, well, you were lying. You don't like a joke as much as the next person, because everyone in the class is laughing except you.
Yeah.
So you don't like a joke of the one. And maybe you didn't like the joke that Mickey Tillman has made a big farting noise, but that is a joke, and everybody else liked it, and so you're wrong.
I mean, I think it's also...
you don't have the sort of wherewithal to say that when you're 6.
No. And I mean, I think also as well, when you're looking at something that's written down, it doesn't have any nuance on it. You know, if you wrote something down like saying to a loved one, what have I done to deserve you? Now, you don't know whether that's a nice thing or a bad thing.
Yes, exactly.
All right, this is a joke. I won't name the comedian. That's probably not his fault, although he wrote it. Yeah, this is the winner of the funniest joke of the Edinburgh Fringe in 2022, right?
Oh,
And this was picked by a panel of judges organised by the TV channel Dave. I tried to steal spaghetti from the shop, but the female guard saw me and I couldn't get past her. This is just like my first gig, it really is. So, people who haven't got a sense of humour.
Probably not their fault, they just need to be sent on a course.
Perhaps the Open University could do something for them. All right, Mark, people who haven't got a sense of humour definitely going into room 101. Okay, this is our last choice, Mark. We've got an audio illustration of what this last one is. Let's have a listen to this.
Tonight's proposal is that anybody born in England should be deported.
So, what is this?
I guess this is my old self.
Yes, yes.
That was a series of radio shows I did where the idea was to propose something that seemed mad. Like anyone born in England should be deported. I think there was one that was that the royal family should be chosen by a weekly national lottery.
Yeah, we have a selection of other things you've said here. Nobody should go to school until they're 35. No one should live in the same family for more than a year.
Yeah.
People should be rehoused at random. And this is the one I'm really intrigued by. All judges should be ex-convicts.
Yeah.
What was the thinking behind that one?
Well, because they'd understand, you know, they'd know, you know, if an ex-convict would know if someone in the court was lying, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
I could see it in your eyes. Not only that, but I did 4 years with you in Wandsworth.
But wouldn't they be more sympathetic towards the potential criminal?
To be honest, Paul,
Yeah.
it was a joke and shouldn't be taken literally.
Really? So this is about you being angrier as a younger man?
Yeah, I think those programmes were all right, but I think I was just, and I suppose that's sort of a path that most of us go. I didn't like to change my opinions about things particularly, but I used to be so angry, just getting on, you know, and shouting at people, and apart from anything else, it doesn't really work, does it? You know, I see people like that now getting really cross and fuming with people and that for about 2 minutes, and think, do you think that won them round at all, now that you've called them all those names?
Because you used to be really angry about Steve Davis, I seem to remember.
Yeah, I used to. Oh, God, yeah, I did. I had a line that was, yes, he's a really good example. Because he was Sports Personality of the Year.
Yeah.
And I used to have the line that goes, what? It would make more sense to give it to the Q. And and now I think I quite like Steve Davis.
Yeah.
He comes over really well and everything.
Was it because he was always winning?
Yeah, when I was in my 20s, obviously I adored Alex Higgins and players like that, and he was a sort of symbol for people who were just a bit more wild and crazy and stuff. So I think it's not getting older, because I don't think you become less angry necessarily. I think you become better at putting your case. I think when you know, and I think doing this job as well, I think it's just nicer to do a show where people laugh.
I mean, you do your series Mark Steele's in Town,
Yeah,
and that you've got to find good things to say about places, haven't
Yeah,
you?
with that show, you've got to like a place so much that you could be foul about it, and people know it's see in your eyes that you like them.
Yeah.
So in the last series, I did Newport, and which was a brilliant thing. I got to Newport. It's quite a sort of old, how can you put it, a very working class, quite poor town. And there was a bloke there, his wife and child, who was about 3, just in the centre of Newport. The bloke said to his wife and kid, there was a pigeon, and he went, yeah, look here, I'm going to punch that pigeon right in the face. Do you want to watch me? How can you not find that funny?
Did he punch the pigeon?
I don't think he did. I think
No.
the pigeon flew off, which
Yeah.
is all you bloody... It's gone and flown off, and it ate. And so...
The pigeons have got an instinct. They know when somebody's going to punch
They
them
know
in the
when
beak.
someone... Yeah, they're very smart like that.
Yeah. So
Especially in Newport. So the opening line of the show in Newport, if I can remember it right, as I was about to do it, I thought, I can't say this. The opening line was, Newport was a very industrial town with lots of mines and docks and grime and squalor, and the mine and docks and industry is all gone, but somehow the grime and squalor are still here. And I was about to say it, I thought, I can't say it, but they all cheer. And I think,
Yes.
oh, because because we know we like each other in a way.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
And you couldn't do it if you really didn't like a place. You couldn't. Do
No,
it.
no.
You could tell in someone's eyes, can't you? It's like
Yes.
with a mate.
Yes.
You know?
Now, I mean, you did the TV version of this many years ago now, back in the early 2000s, and you nominated Bono from U2. Let's hear what you said about him then.
He's just so full of pomposity, and it just is so sickening. And then he does all this charity stuff,
Yeah.
and he'll sit there and go just on comic relief or something. Just £3,000 is all we need to feed this village, and you think, well, give it to him then. Yeah. Yeah, that's all right. I'm with that.
Yeah. So would you still be angry about Bono if I encouraged you along that line?
No, I think the same now as I did then.
Yeah.
It's not the opinions, it's the sort of getting angry about things and shouting. And I think a lot of younger people are actually brilliant at this. They're very witty and imaginative. They want to change the world, climate change and things. And they're very adept at making brilliant little websites and stuff that you can log into. Whereas I think a lot of my generation thought that the way to win someone round to your cause was to go, why can't you understand what is so obvious, you stupid, scummy pile of fox mess? And
Which is
as a general rule, very few people went, do you know what, he's right, you know, when you put it like that, he's right. So you just put people off, you know, and I think try and win people.
Well, I think
round.
we put Bono into Room 101 before, so if he comes out of Room 101, would put your old self in? Or do you quite
I'd
like
want to
it?
go in there if he was coming out, because I don't want to be in the same place as him.
All right, then we'll put the old Mark Steele into Room 101. Here he goes. Okay, that was all your choices, Mark. Well, after all that negativity, is there one thing that is in your life that you couldn't live without?
I think, and I learnt this through lockdown, when the sport disappeared, that left me completely unrooted. I didn't know what day or time of day it was or anything. And I can watch just about anything. The curling.
Curling,
Yeah.
really? That strange sport that involves tidying up
Yeah.
at speed.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And in the last Winter Olympics, the Italians won, and it's just made for Italians because it's the serenity and the guile and that of the snow going. And then as soon as it goes, vatti, socolo, classio, fantastic.
So is there any sport you don't like?
I think I can live without equestrian.
Yeah.
I saw in the last Olympics, I saw this on Twitter, I don't know who it was who put it, bless them, but they put, a lot of people don't understand that equestrian, for a lot of people, is the only route out of the ghetto.
Well, if you're on horseback, you do go faster. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mark Steele.
Room 101 was written and presented by Paul Merton with additional material by John Owen and Suki Webster. It was produced by Richard Wilson. It's a Hatchet production for BBC Radio 4.
And joining Paul next week for more discussion on what should be banished to Room 101 will be Phil Wang. A government plan to spend £1 million on a war memorial for Muslim soldiers has sparked some debate and put memorials front and central again in modern culture wars. After the news, Antisocial explores the issues raised.
Preheat oven, gas mark 9, pour onions into palm of hand, ding, dinner is served. That's my recipe.
Fresh comic chaos from Tim Key and Tom Basden.
Your head's swollen up.
Pardon me?
It's swollen right up. It's like an onion on a cocktail stick.
Using poetic license when it comes to poetry.
I sometimes write poems about love in the community, that sort of thing. Sometimes snooker.
Featuring Katie Wicks, Stephen Merchant, Lolliana Fope and Morgana Robinson.
Looks like he's been rolled out of dough while the lights were off.
She's got away with words, Lord, I'll give her that.
Bang on.
Pardon me?
Tim Key's poetry programme. Tuesday nights, News 6:30 comedy on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds.
BBC News at midday. The Parliamentary Spending Watchdog has found that only 10% of the money pledged by the government under its flagship Levelling Up agenda has been spent. The Public Accounts Committee said ministers were unable to provide any compelling examples of what the funding had delivered. Here's our political correspondent, Hannah Miller.
The Public Accounts Committee looked at the progress of 3 government schemes, which between them total more than £10 billion. It found that only just over £1 billion has been spent by local authorities, with projects delayed on a scale that the committee chair Dame Meg Hillier described as absolutely astonishing. The cross-party group of MPs said that during its inquiry it had asked for 3 examples of projects that had delivered change, but those provided by the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities were relatively small scale. In response, the department said the projects were multi-year programmes where spending would ramp up in later years. It said it was providing expert support to councils to tackle delays.
Russia is holding a presidential election with Vladimir Putin the only serious candidate and certain to win. One of his most strident critics, Alexander Navalny, died in prison last month. Other opposition figures have been forced into exile. The poll is taking place over 3 days and 11 time zones. The first ship carrying aid for Gaza using a new maritime corridor announced by President Biden has been seen off the coast of the territory. The vessel, Open Arms, left Cyprus 3 days ago. It's towing 200 tons of food supplied by an American NGO, World Central Kitchen. Anna Foster reports from Jerusalem.
The Spanish charity ship set sail from Cyprus on Tuesday, carrying 200 tons of food. When it reaches shore, it'll have to use a temporary jetty, which has just been built, to offload its cargo. The next challenge will be securely and fairly distributing the aid to a desperate population. More than 300,000 people are still sheltering in northern Gaza. Overnight, the Hamas-run health ministry said 20 people were killed and more than 150 injured as they waited for aid in Gaza City. Israel said reports that it was an IDF attack were false and it was thoroughly assessing the incident.
The Chancellor has said the Conservative Party has been absolutely transparent about donations received from a businessman who's at the centre of a racism row. The party has refused to deny reports that it's received another £5 million from Frank Hester, who is alleged to have said the MP Diane Abbott made him want to hate all black women and should be shot. Speaking during a visit to the University of Sunderland, Jeremy Hunt said that all rules were being followed and any further donations would be declared when the time was right.
We absolutely are transparent. We follow all the rules, the regulations. We believe in that transparency. Many of the laws about it we actually passed ourselves, and the Conservative Party fully complies with all the requirements to be transparent about our donations.
National Highways says people should avoid part of the M25 this weekend, where the road will be completely closed for the first time in its history. A bridge is being demolished as part of the reconstruction of Junction 10 near Guildford in Surrey. The road will close in both directions this evening and won't reopen until Monday morning. Jonathan Wade is from National Highways. He says there will be delays.
It will be disruptive on some of the local roads because you can't take 4 lanes of traffic, as you see on the M25, and funnel that all into a single carriageway. So as long as people are heeding our message and as far as they can avoiding this part of the country, it will really help us.
In football, Arsenal have drawn Bayern Munich in the quarter-finals of the Champions League. The first leg is at the Emirates. Manchester City will travel to Real Madrid. If both English teams progress, they will face each other in the semi-finals. BBC News.
This is BBC Radio 4, where now it's time for Antisocial with Adam Fleming.
Hello, I'm Adam Fleming, and this is the Antisocial podcast from BBC Radio 4. Each episode, we take one subject that's big online and look at it from a load of different angles. Less read it, more heard it. This week, or rather 2 weeks ago, the Chancellor opened his budget speech with this pledge.
I start today by remembering the Muslims who died in 2 world wars in the service of freedom and democracy. We need a memorial to honour them. I've decided to allocate £1 million towards the cost of building one.
£1 million isn't a lot in a budget where the cuts to national insurance cost 9,900 times more. But this measure made some people very, very angry, like Michelle Dewberry, presenter on GB News.
I cannot for the life of me understand who on earth briefed Jeremy Hunt to say, do you know what? I know what we're going to do. Right at the very start of the budget, we're going to, tell people how we're going to change their lives for the better financially. I know what we're going to do. We're going to announce a memorial. I think it's absolutely absurd.
It sparked a debate about what gets memorialised and what doesn't.
Commemorating non-white people who fought for the British Empire is obvious because it's simply what happened.
Yes, they might have fought. However, their names should be added to the memorials that are already there.
I think it goes a long way in healing the rifts that have been caused recently.
I think most Muslims out there are thinking after hearing this, focus on showing us respect. A £1 million war memorial isn't going to replace that.
What did Muslim soldiers do in the wars? We'll open up the history books. Whose memorial is it anyway? We'll do the anti-social tour of commemorative sites. And statues have become infamous flashpoints in the culture wars. We'll explain what's gone up and what's come down. And if you want to get involved in the discussion online, you can use the hashtag BBC Antisocial. And with me throughout this episode of Antisocial are two people who come at this discussion from different perspectives. Here in the studio is Sundar Katwala, Director of British Future. Hello, Sundar.
Hi.
What does British Future do?
We're a non-partisan think tank. We look at identity, integration, race relations, try and build common ground on issues that come forward.
So this issue is right up your street then?
Yeah.
Also here in the studio is Reem Ibrahim from the Institute of Economic Affairs. Hello, Reem.
Hello, how are you?
Very well, thank you. For people who don't know the IEA, as it's shorthanded to, what do you do?
Yeah, so we're an educational charity, a think tank, that talks about the fundamental institutions of a free society. So, of course, when it comes to free market economics, the budget is of interest.
And is this issue about what gets memorialised and whether it's a Muslim war memorial, is that like classic Institute for Economic Affairs territory, or...?
Not really, no. But what's interesting about this is the actual announcement, in my opinion, isn't classic budget announcement. So I think it's interesting in itself.
Okay, lots to discuss. And but one thing we should clear up right at the start of the show is the fact that this idea of a Muslim war memorial isn't a new one. Jeremy Hunt did not just come up with it when he was doing his budget speech. Plans for a specific monument have been in the works for almost a decade now. Imam Asim Hafiz is chaplain to Muslims in the British Armed Forces and is one of the people that has been involved in that campaign.
The memorial is going to be a fusion of different cultures and different architecture. In the world wars, a lot of Muslims who fought for Britain came from the Indian subcontinent. So this memorial will reflect their faith identity, but will also reflect the country that they came from.
And how long has the journey been to getting it built?
The initial conversation started in 2015 when we were commemorating the centenary of the First World War. And a lot of conversations were taking place about who do we need to commemorate, how do we make this more inclusive, how do we ensure that we reflect the diversity of the people that served during the world wars. And so from that fell out this idea that we could have a memorial which would also be dedicated to the thousands of Muslims, hundreds of thousands of Muslims who served in the world wars. And so we're looking at about 2016 now, and we're now at 2024, so it's about 8 years or so, I guess.
A long-term project. And then what difference does Jeremy Hunt's £1 million make? Because I can imagine to a campaign like yours, that's quite a large sum, but in the grand scheme of government spending, it's quite small.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a huge difference because, memorials aren't always necessarily cheap to make, especially if you want to ensure that they reflect the essence of what you're trying to portray, and you're trying to bring all these different fusions of different cultures together. But also, this memorial is going to be established at the National Memorial Arboretum, which is the home to the Armed Forces Memorial. And we want it to be part of a family of memorials. It's not something that's going to be standalone. It'll be next to different memorials that are commemorating different battles, different regiments, different individuals, different faiths, different cultures. So a pledge of £1 million, I think, will go a long way to meet the cost of this memorial. And we're really grateful for the government to make this announcement.
Thank thanks to Imam Asim Hafiz. So, Reem, what was your instant reaction when you heard Jeremy Hunt's budget announcement?
Yeah, so of course at the IEA we're all listening to the budget quite closely, and I was quite surprised to see this be the first announcement from Jeremy Hunt. He effectively said at the start of the budget that this was in the context of the conflict going on in the Middle East, all of the heightened political tensions that we're seeing at the moment, especially in the UK. We saw with the Rochdale by-election, this was a hugely contentious issue, and so then bringing that into the budget, pledging £1 million of taxpayer money going to a Muslim memorial to commemorate those that lived in the post-war democracy or British democracy in this country. Singling out a particular faith is more divisive than it is inclusive.
So you were sceptical about the aims of the project and about the political timing?
Yes.
Sundar, what was your reaction?
Well, I think the points about the political timing are well made. This is an entirely benignly intended gesture by the Chancellor. He's got a budget to present with cost of living crisis going on. He's not spent a lot of time thinking about how this will be received, and so he hasn't actually thought about two different kinds of objection and challenge that will come up. The Treasury doesn't think about community affairs and so on. That's not their specialism. I was still pleased to see that the bid that I think Sajid Javid, the former Chancellor, had made had been recognised, because I've been working on this issue of inclusive remembrance, inclusive commemoration for over a decade now in the British future, including the people who campaigned for this memorial. And there's been a growing awareness in the last decade that the armies that fought in the First World War and the Second World War, surprising to think, in their ethnic and faith mix, they look very like the Britain of 2024 and nothing at all like the Britain of 1914 or 1939. Because we had an empire and Commonwealth, and so in the First World War, the two largest volunteer armies in history are the Indian Army volunteers to the British Army. When I say Indian Army, you can think about lots of different things, but this is Britain running all India, what is now India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. So when I say Indian Army, you might not know, most people don't know, a third of the soldiers are Muslim in that army. So there's this enormous contribution, and something really good happened in the last 10 years, which is that the basic fact that there was Commonwealth participation started to be known at the turn of the century, really was invisible before that, and to become majority knowledge, but the minority faith participation is still not so well known.
Well, one of the tweets or posts on X, as I should technically say, that I saw around about the time said, Hunt has decided to single out Muslims for special treatment and claiming they played a significant and decisive role in World War II. They did not, this poster said. Hunt is trying to rewrite history. So what part did they play in the World Wars? Here is historian and author Dr. Guy Bowman.
The big picture is that there were around 4 million men of the Indian Army across the First and the Second World War, and of those around a third of them were Muslims. So we're talking something more than 1 million Muslims in the Indian Army supporting the British Army in the First World War and the Second World War. And then alongside that, a hell of a lot of men from other parts of the empire and indeed beyond who were Muslim, who were involved in the war efforts in both wars.
But the vast majority were from the Indian subcontinent, because that was a British colony.
Exactly, yeah.
So what were their roles in the First World War then? Because obviously the First and Second World Wars were fought very differently.
Indeed. Actually, the first shot in the First World War that was fired by somebody on the British side was fired by a Muslim in East Africa. So his name was Alhaji Brunchi. He was from Gold Coast, which we would now call Ghana, and he was part of the British attack on neighbouring Togoland, which was a German colony.
Wow.
But in terms of the Western Front, which I guess is the thing that is most well known for the First World War, there were 4 Indian divisions who arrived in Marseille in France in September of 1914, 2 divisions of infantry, the Meerut and the Lahore, and 2 divisions of cavalry. and they went up to the front line in October 1914. They were driven by red London buses, and they arrived near Ypres, the famous, the first Battle of Ypres, one of the most famous places of battle for the British Army during that war.
And they did the same kind of fighting as everyone else?
Absolutely. They were posted alongside British troops and Canadian troops and French troops, and they were, very much involved in that awful trench warfare that bogged down. And they stayed there for a long time. They were involved in the Battle of Neuve Chapelle, lots of loss of life there. There were 3 Victoria Crosses which were awarded to Muslim Indian soldiers during the First World War. 2 of those were awarded in France and Belgium. One of them was in Mesopotamia, what we now call Iraq.
And in terms of how they ended up there, how were they recruited?
They were all volunteers. I mean, notionally at least, they were there because they wanted to join the army. There was never any conscription in India, neither in the First World War nor in the Second World War.
So let's fast forward then to the Second World War. Obviously a very different conflict. Where are we seeing Muslim soldiers fighting there?
Across the board. I mean, everywhere that British involved in the Second World War, with the exception of the D-Day campaign and after that, everywhere you would find soldiers and indeed Air Force and Navy from India as well. Particularly strongly in North Africa and then subsequently in Italy, and particularly strongly in East Africa at the beginning of the war, and also of course in Burma and in the Far East and in those crucial battles on the borders of India at Kohima and Impal.
And are there any kind of heroes from that period with a Muslim background?
Oh, many. I could tell you about Siddiq Ahmed, who was a doctor, a medical officer. He was attached to the small contingent of Indian soldiers who were posted to France in 1939. And he was captured and became a prisoner, and he worked as a doctor in the prisoner of war camps, and then in 1943 he saw his opportunity to escape, and he escaped with 2 fellow officers, so Abdullah Khan and Ratan Singh, so 2 Muslims and a Sikh together, and they escaped from a train in France, and they trekked south for many days with very little in the way of food, and